The year was 1993. Michael Jackson was at the height of his fame. His Dangerous World Tour had broken every record imaginable, pulling in millions of fans across continents. He was not just a superstar, he was a phenomenon. Every appearance triggered hysteria. Every performance felt like a global event. But on one night, etched into legend, something happened that stunned everyone. Michael Jackson vanished. Not after the show. Not while traveling. But at the very moment the lights were set to go down, the band ready to play, and 60,000 fans chanting his name, Michael simply disappeared. For weeks leading up to the concert, the city had been electric. Hotels were fully booked, shops sold out of fedora hats and sequin gloves, and billboards across town bore Michael's face. Fans camped outside the stadium for days, braving cold nights and rain just for the chance to get close to their idol. Some came from hundreds of miles away, pooling money for bus tickets, clutching homemade signs reading, "Michael, we love you." Local media called it Jackson Fever. Television crews captured endless lines of fans, their eyes wide with anticipation, their voices hoarse from chanting his name. One journalist remarked, "It feels less like a concert, more like a pilgrimage." By the afternoon of the show, traffic in the city had ground to a halt. Streets around the stadium were blocked off, helicopters circled overhead, and the air buzzed with the sound of thousands of voices blending into a single roar. Inside, the stage was a fortress of light and steel. Pyrotechnics were tested, giant screens flickered, and the sound of the band warming up echoed like thunder through the empty arena. Crew members raced around with clipboards, walkie-talkies, and frantic energy. Everything had to be perfect. And behind the curtain, in a private dressing room, Michael sat quietly, preparing for what should have been another legendary night. For Michael, pre-show hours were sacred. He was a perfectionist, and the moments before stepping on stage were when he withdrew into himself, gathering focus like a coiled spring. He sat before a mirror, fedora resting on the table, sequin jacket laid neatly beside him. His makeup artist applied the final touches while his stylist adjusted the cuffs of his shirt. Michael barely spoke, his voice low, his movements calm. When everyone left the room, he closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. It was something he had done since childhood. Let me give them joy. Let me give them hope. Let me give them love. Outside, the stadium shook with anticipation. Tens of thousands of fans screamed his name in unison. Michael! 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 Normally, those chants would send adrenaline surging through him. But tonight, something was different. 10 minutes before showtime, the stage manager knocked. "Michael, it's time. The platform is ready." Michael nodded softly. He adjusted his fedora, slipped on the iconic glove, and stood. His security detail formed around him, preparing to escort him down the narrow corridor toward the stage. As he walked, dancers clapped him on the shoulder, technicians whispered encouragements, and crew members cleared a path. He reached the platform, a hydraulic lift hidden beneath the stage that would launch him in a dramatic burst of smoke and light. The stage manager raised his headset. 30 seconds. The crowd outside screamed so loud it rattled the steel supports. Michael took a deep breath. And then, it happened. In the chaos of the countdown, Michael stepped aside. At first, no one noticed. A dancer assumed he was adjusting his hat. A technician thought he was stepping back for a moment. But when the smoke cannons fired and the hydraulic platform rose into the air, Michael wasn't on it. The spotlight cut through the fog, searching for his silhouette. Fans screamed louder, expecting him to appear. But the stage was empty. Backstage, panic spread instantly. "Where's Michael?" the stage manager shouted into his headset. "He was just here," an assistant cried. Security guards sprinted in every direction. Dancers looked at one another in shock. Crew members tore through corridors, searching dressing rooms, stairwells, even loading docks. But Michael Jackson was nowhere to be found. From the stands, fans thought it was part of the show. When the platform rose empty, they screamed even louder, expecting some new, elaborate entrance. Some chanted his name, others cried tears of joy, believing they were about to witness something never seen before. But backstage, fear was taking hold. The stage manager shouted again, "Has anyone seen him? Check every corner. Find him now." Within minutes, security had locked down the area. Stadium exits were sealed, staff combed hallways, and every crew member was ordered to search. The band, still waiting on stage, looped the opening chords nervously, stalling for time. The crowd grew restless, sensing something was wrong. And in the middle of it all, one terrifying thought echoed through the minds of Michael's team. The king of pop had vanished. The moment the platform rose empty, chaos erupted. The stage manager ripped off his headset and shouted into the radio, "Michael's gone. Find him now." Assistants sprinted down corridors, checking dressing rooms, bathrooms, stairwells. Security guards burst into loading bays, kitchens, even the parking lot. Every second felt like an eternity. One dancer whispered to another, "This has to be a trick, right? Some kind of surprise entrance." But the terror on the faces of the crew told a different story. Michael Jackson was not on stage. He was not backstage. He was not anywhere. 5 minutes passed. The band was still looping the intro, but nerves were fraying. The crowd, at first ecstatic, began to murmur. Confusion spread through the stands. Some fans chanted his name louder, others booed, thinking there was a technical delay. Backstage, the doctor paced nervously. The dancers huddled, whispering prayers. The head of security barked orders, "Lock every exit. No one goes in or out until we find him." The possibility that someone had kidnapped Michael was whispered, then spoken aloud. Panic spread. If the world's most famous man had been taken, the consequences were unthinkable. Outside the stadium, dozens of journalists and camera crews waited to capture the concert. But when the scheduled start time passed, they smelled blood. Rumors spread like wildfire. Michael refused to perform. Michael collapsed backstage. Michael Jackson is missing. Within 30 minutes, news channels began broadcasting live. Breaking news: Michael Jackson has not appeared on stage tonight. Witnesses report chaos backstage. Speculation exploded. Some claimed he'd had a breakdown. Others suggested he'd been taken away by ambulance. A few whispered darker theories, that he had fled, that something terrible had happened inside the stadium. The energy shifted. What had begun as excitement turned into unease. A fan in the front row later recalled, "We thought he was going to do something incredible, like appear from the sky or run through the crowd. But the longer it went on, the scarier it felt." Some fans began to cry. Others shouted angrily. The chant of "Michael, Michael," turned into a wave of desperation. Security tried to calm the crowd, but whispers spread, "He's gone. Michael's gone." After 15 minutes, the band stopped playing. The silence was deafening. The stage manager's voice cracked as he shouted into the radio, "Where is he? Someone must have seen him." But the answer came back the same every time. Negative. "He's not here." One assistant broke down, sobbing. He wouldn't just leave. He wouldn't do that to the fans. But with every passing minute, the unthinkable felt more real. Michael Jackson, the most famous performer in the world, had vanished without a trace. Some whispered that he had fainted and been rushed away quietly. Others believed he was hiding, overwhelmed by the pressure. A few feared the worst, that he had been abducted. The head of security clenched his jaw. "This is a breach. We search every inch. No exceptions." Teams swept the arena, dogs brought in to sniff for any sign, radios crackling with static and fear. But still, there was no Michael. 40 minutes passed. The crowd grew restless, angry, scared. Some began leaving, convinced the show was cancelled. Others stayed, screaming his name until their voices cracked. A journalist outside shouted into a live camera, "This is unprecedented. Michael Jackson has vanished, and no one knows where he is. The story began to spread beyond the city, beyond the country. Within hours, it would reach every corner of the world. Backstage, the atmosphere was suffocating. Dancers sat with their heads in their hands. The band packed away their instruments. Assistants cried openly. One whispered, "He's never done this before." Not once. Something's really wrong. And then, in the midst of despair, a guard rushed in, out of breath. "I think we found something." The room fell silent, the guard's words cut through the chaos backstage like a blade. "I think we found something." Everyone turned toward him. Breathless, he explained. Some fans reported a man in the crowd, dressed in plain clothes, wearing a mask and a hat. He was standing with them, singing with them. They swear it was Michael. At first, the crew dismissed it as hysteria. Impossible. Michael Jackson, the most recognizable face on the planet, blending into a crowd of 60,000? Absurd. But then, a chilling realization spread. Michael had vanished before the show. The fans' description matched his build, his movements, his unmistakable energy. Could it be true? As investigators pieced it together later, the truth was stranger than fiction. Moments before the show began, Michael had slipped away from his handlers. With a simple disguise, a surgical mask, dark glasses, and a baseball cap, he had walked out into the very sea of people who adored him. To them, he was just another fan, waiting for the king of pop. But as the lights dimmed and the platform rose empty, Michael was already there, standing shoulder to shoulder with the crowd, hearing their screams, feeling their energy. One fan later recalled, "There was this guy next to me, singing along to the opening loop. He had the same kind of aura. I thought, no, it can't be. But when he moved his hand, the way he clapped, it was him. I swear it was him." Why would the biggest star in the world disappear from his own show? For Michael, the answer was simple. He wanted to see it. He wanted to feel, just once, what it was like to be in the audience, to hear the deafening roar not as the one who caused it, but as the one surrounded by it. He wanted to be close to his fans, not separated by barricades or bodyguards. To stand among them, anonymous, hearing their love without the filter of fame. As the chants of "Michael, Michael," shook the stadium, he stood there quietly, letting it wash over him. Tears filled his eyes. For a fleeting moment, he wasn't the king of pop. He was simply Michael, a man overwhelmed by the devotion of his people. Of course, his disguise couldn't hold forever. A young girl in the crowd noticed. She tugged her mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mom, that's him. That's Michael." The mother laughed it off, until the man in the mask began moving in rhythm, his hands snapping with perfect precision, his shoulders grooving with a familiarity only one man possessed. Soon, whispers spread. People around him stared, some daring to ask, "Are you?" But Michael only smiled beneath the mask, pressing a finger to his lips as if to say, "Don't tell." For those who realized the truth, it was surreal. They were standing next to their idol, not on a stage hundreds of feet away, but right beside them. Some cried. Some froze in shock. Others tried desperately to stay calm, terrified that if they drew attention, security would whisk him away. One fan later admitted, "I'll never forget it. He looked right at me, nodded, and kept clapping to the music. I was inches from him. It was the most magical moment of my life." Meanwhile, security scrambled. Word of Michael being in the crowd spread quickly, confirmed by staff who had spotted him moving among fans. The head of security turned pale. "He's out there, in the middle of 60,000 people. If they realize, it'll be a riot." Panic surged. Dozens of guards prepared to rush in, but the stage manager stopped them. No sudden moves. If the crowd finds out, it could be dangerous for him, and for everyone else. As the minutes dragged on, Michael's heart pounded. He knew the crew was panicking. He knew the press was already spinning stories. But for the first time in decades, he felt free. Standing among his fans, he felt their joy, their anticipation, their pure love. It was intoxicating. But it was also bittersweet. He realized how much of his life had been spent behind walls, behind security, behind masks. Tonight, for a brief moment, he was on the other side. Still, he couldn't stay forever. The fans had waited for him. They deserved their show. After nearly an hour, Michael made his choice. He gently tapped the shoulder of a nearby fan and whispered, "Don't forget this moment." Then, slipping back through the shadows, he made his way toward a service tunnel, where stunned security guards finally intercepted him. "Michael, what were you thinking?" the head of security hissed. Michael only smiled, pulling off the mask. "I just wanted to feel it. To know what they feel." And with that, he walked calmly back toward the stage. The crowd had nearly lost hope. Some were leaving, others sat with tears streaming down their faces. The stage was silent, the air heavy with confusion and despair. And then, darkness. The stadium lights cut out in an instant. Gasps erupted from the audience. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a single spotlight. From beneath the stage, the platform began to rise again. Slowly, dramatically. And this time, it wasn't empty. Michael Jackson stood there, frozen in his signature pose, fedora tilted low, one hand on his hat, the other poised at his side. The stadium exploded. 60,000 voices screamed as one, a sound so deafening it shook the very ground. People clutched each other, fainted, cried, screamed his name as if their lives depended on it. Michael held the pose for nearly 30 seconds, letting the roar wash over him. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with love. He had felt what it was like to be among them, and now he was back where he belonged. The music hit. The bass line thundered. Michael snapped into motion, every move sharp, electric, unforgettable. It wasn't just a performance. It was a resurrection. Fans later said it was as if he had been reborn in front of their eyes, disappearing into myth, then returning like a miracle. For the next 2 hours, Michael gave everything he had. Every song, every dance move, every gesture carried the weight of what had happened. The fans responded with an intensity no one had ever seen. It was no longer just a concert. It was a legend in the making. Backstage, crew members wept. Even hardened security guards admitted they had goosebumps. Reporters who had come to cover a scandal instead found themselves writing about the most powerful concert of Michael's career. When the show finally ended, and Michael stood at the edge of the stage, drenched in sweat, he whispered into the microphone, "Thank you. I'll never forget this night." And neither would the world. Headlines the next day told the story. Michael Jackson disappears, then returns to deliver the performance of a lifetime. The king of pop turns panic into history. Fans who had been there told their children, and their children's children. It became one of those nights that lived forever in whispers, in stories, in the myth of the man himself. For Michael, that night was more than a concert. It was a reminder of why he did it all, of the unbreakable bond between him and his fans. He had disappeared, not to escape them, but to be with them, to stand among them, to feel what they felt. And when he returned, he carried that feeling onto the stage, transforming the show into something eternal. It wasn't just music. It wasn't just entertainment. It was the night Michael Jackson disappeared, and returned greater than ever.